This is text problem 6-8, and we are told that to raise funds aimed at providing more support for public goods, a state government has just imposed a unit excise tax equal to $4 for each monthly unit of telephone services sold by each telephone company operating in the state. The diagram to the right, over here, depicts the positions of the demand and supply curves for the telephone services before the excise tax was imposed. And we're asked to use the line drawing tool to show the new market supply curve now that the hike has gone into effect. So I'm going to click the little magnifying glass here so we can see our graph bigger. And so let's think about what this tax is going to do. A tax of $4 means essentially that the cost to the supplier now is $4 more than it was before. So the supply curve is going to shift to the left because the price or the cost to the supplier of providing the good is now more expensive. And remember, that's one of the things that will shift the supply curve to the left is when the cost of producing something is greater. Makes sense, right? The more it costs, the less you're going to want to make as a supplier. The more it costs to make it, the less you want to make as a supplier. So the question now is, how far to the left does the supply curve shift? And since we're told that there's a tax equal to $4, we know now that the cost to produce the telephone service or to provide the telephone service is now $4 more expensive than it was before, because now the suppliers not only having to pay their regular costs, but they're also having to pay $4 to the government in taxes. The shift then is going to be a shift by $4, which just means that at each quantity of telephone service that's being provided, the cost now of providing that, or the supply curve now for providing that, is going to be $4 more. So, for example, at a quantity of 14, we previously had a price of $23. With our tax, we're going to have 23 plus 4, or $27. Similarly, at each of the other quantities. So we can just go across the quantity axis. So say at 20, a quantity of 20, prior to the tax, we had a price or cost of 29. So now we'll have 29 plus 4, or 33. So now we just use our line tool to draw our new supply curve, which will be $4 higher than our old supply curve. So I'll start at the quantity of, say, 11, where before we had a cost of 20, so now I have a cost of 24 at the same quantity of 11. So I'll put my first dot for my line here at a quantity of 11 and price of 24. And I'll do the same thing on the other end of the supply curve at a quantity of 23, where before we had, or I guess I'm going to run out of space on the line, so let's go down to a quantity of 21, where before we had a price of 30, so now we'll have a price of 34. So I can put my other end of my dot up at the quantity 21 and price 34. So all I've done here is shift the supply curve to the left by $4, or up by $4, because the price now is going to be $4 more. The cost to the supplier is now going to be $4 more expensive because of the tax. And then we'll label it our new supply curve S2. And that's the first part of the question. So we'll check that answer. There we go. Now, next the question wants to know, imposing the $4 per month excise tax causes the market price of telephone services to rise by exactly, more than, or less than $4 per month. And to see the answer here, we just look at our new equilibrium price. So before, with our old supply curve, which is the red one, the equilibrium price, which is always where supply and demand cross, was at $27. Now, our new equilibrium price is where our new supply curve crosses the demand curve, which is up at $29. Notice that's only $2 more expensive than before. So the market price actually rises by less than the total of the excise tax of $4. So the market price rises by less than $4 per month. There we go. And the last part of the question asks us, which of the following describes how the excise tax is split between consumers and phone service providers? First, does the phone service provider pay the majority of the tax? Is information insufficient to determine the split? Is the burden of the tax split evenly, or do consumers pay a majority of the tax? So the best way to think about this is to recall that the equilibrium price is the price the consumer is going to pay, right? So our previous equilibrium price was $27. The consumer would pay $27 per unit of telephone service. Now, with the tax, the consumer is paying $29 per unit of the telephone service. So with a tax of $4, now the consumer is paying $2 more, which means the consumer is paying $2 of that $4 tax. Who else is there to pay the other half? That'd be the supplier. So the supplier is left paying the other $2. So the burden here is split evenly, which again we know because the consumer's price for telephone service in this case rose by $2, but the whole tax was $4, which means the supplier has to pay the other half, the other $2 of this tax. So the burden of the tax is split evenly. The consumer's paying $2 more now that there's a $4 tax, and the supplier's paying $2 more now that there's a $4 tax. So we'll check that answer, and we're good. Any other questions, feel free to shoot me an email or stop by my office hours.